Hi, I'm Judy Weintraub. I am so excited to have you all join me today for this webinar on how to quickly write a book that will explode your business. Before we get started, I'd really appreciate it if you could put in the chat maybe where you're from, and if you know the topic that you want to write your book on, put that in. Or if you're not really sure, maybe just write a little bit about what industry you're in or what services you provide. And I'll give you a minute to do that before I get started. So Mitch is from Larchmont, New York, and he wants to write about sense making. That's interesting. Cassie's from Central Illinois in marketing and PR. Mike is from Story Miners and will be writing on using story to win adoption for your business strategy. Very good. And Andres from Lansdale, and his topics changed. That's fine. That's not unusual at all. Okay, well, as people join, hopefully they'll see what's in the chat and they'll add their information as well. Mitch, you want to go ahead and start sharing? Imagine that you could purchase advertising that would make your brand a lot more visible, that would enable people to know, like, and trust you and start referring you to others. That wouldn't be intrusive and would actually have people purchasing that from you. That's available 24/7 with no expiration date and would get you featured on a website with over 5 million people visiting every single day looking to buy things. Well, I'm not aware of any such advertising, and it would probably be really expensive. But if you write and publish a book on Amazon, you can get all of these advantages. It's no wonder that in a study of business owners who had written and published books, 96% of them found that their book significantly enhanced their business growth. And that was in a Forbes article a few years ago. But you may be thinking, I'd love to get a book done, but how do I do it? How do I even find the time to do it? There's so many questions that you might have. In this webinar, I hope to be able to answer several of them for you and to provide you with a structure that will make it much easier for you to get your book done. Okay, next. Let me give you a little bit of background on me. I'm a business attorney. About 9 years ago, I was trying to figure out what I could do with all of the articles that I had published and the presentations that I had given. Really good content that was just sitting there collecting electronic dust. I thought, well, I could compile that information into a book. But that was rather daunting. And I didn't know if it was going to be worth my time to write a book. I figured, well, if there was an easy platform that I could use, then maybe I would do it. So I went online and I couldn't find it. I thought, somebody else has found this resource. I'll reach out to my network and get a referral. But nobody in my network knew of a good resource either. And in fact, I had over 60 people come back to me and say, I love your idea. So when you find that resource, could you share it with me? Well, I decided to go ahead and self-publish my first book. It was very time-consuming and incredibly frustrating. I made a ton of mistakes, but eventually I got it done and I sent it around to people to get their feedback. everybody seemed to think that it was great. It was a really good, helpful book. And 22 people came back to me and said, now that you have figured out how to do it, can you help me get my book done? And I did. I discovered two pretty important things. One, I really enjoyed helping people get their books done. And two, I learned much smarter ways to get my book done. So what I want to do today is share some of those and also tell you a little bit about SkillBites, because SkillBites is the company that I formed that helps people write and publish books. We provide all the services that you might need. If you need a ghostwriter, if you need an editor or layout designer or a cover designer, or need help getting up on Amazon, book coaching services, you can come to one place for all those services. Next. So what I want to cover today is why you want to write a book. There are so many different advantages to getting a book done. How you get started. I'm going to take you through my 5-step process for starting a book. Identifying your objective, your target market, your topic, figuring out how you're going to find the time to write your book, and creating a structure that will make it much easier for you to write your book. Then we'll look at 4 ways to get your book written more quickly. And we'll look at the 3 most popular publishing options that are available. And then we'll do a quick overview of the 8 steps you need to take after your manuscript is done, so that you have a good sense of what's involved. Because if you think that the writing of the book is all you need to be focused on, you might be really disappointed to find out after you've written the book that there's a lot of other steps that you have to pay attention to as well. So you can decide if this is truly what you want to be doing. And then we should have some time before the end of the hour for questions and answers. First, I'd like to tell you a little bit about a couple of my authors. Next. This is Sarah. Sarah ran an image consulting firm, and she was a highly reputable speaker. She was invited to speak at a conference in front of 8,000 people, and she shared a stage with Hillary Clinton. She was given the opportunity to sell her books at that conference, but she didn't have a book. She had many people come to her after her presentation looking to purchase her book, but she didn't have one. She was invited to speak at another conference and was told that there was an event sponsor who was willing to purchase 360 copies of her book to give to the attendees. But she didn't have a book, so she had to turn them down. She knew she needed to have a book, but she just couldn't figure out how she could find the time to write it, what she should write on, and how to go about doing it. Well, Sarah came to one of my book writing workshops, similar to what you all are learning today, and she got really fired up to get her book done. Once she knew how to go about it, she got really motivated, and within 6 weeks, she had a draft of her book done. After she got me the manuscript file, 4 months later, she had copies of her book in hand. And that led to getting more paid speaking engagements, a TV interview, and other media interviews. And she got more leads and clients from it as she sent her books out to her hot prospects. In addition to all of that, Sarah said there was tremendous personal value in writing the book. It gave her tremendous confidence in herself and a feeling of accomplishment and just a liberating feeling for having gotten something done that she had been wanting to get done for so long. Next. This is Dr. John. Dr. John is a chiropractor who noticed that he was getting a lot more patients coming to him with headaches and neck pain. He wanted to take his knowledge and put it into a book that would help his clients alleviate those pains, but he didn't know how to do it. He had come to SkillBites through a referral, and I helped him get his book written and published. He told me that in the 2 years since his book was published, he has gotten over 40 new clients directly attributable to his book, which he knows because when a new client comes in, they fill out a little survey as to how they heard of him. And 40 people identified that they heard of him through his book. And the interesting thing about it is that he did virtually no marketing. All he did was put the front cover of his book on his website. He had copies of his book in his waiting room for his patients to take with him, no charge. And he gave copies of his books to orthopedics in the area to give to their patients. Dr. John says he no longer has to advertise. People come to him for his services. So that frees up a lot of his time. In addition, the 40 new clients is over $60,000, which is a pretty good return on a $5,000 book. So I'd love to hear how excited you are to get your book done. Put in the chat where you fall on a scale of 1 to 10, where 1 is, no, not for me, interested in the information, but I'm not really interested in writing a book. Or 10, I am super excited to get my book done. I want to get it done quickly. Within the next 6 months, I want to have my book done. Now, there's no judgment here. It's just where you are. No wrong answers. But let me tell you that if you're rating yourself below about an 8, you're probably not ready to focus on getting your book done. You're going to procrastinate. It's going to take a lot longer. And maybe by the time it's done, it's not even going to be a book that is worth you getting out there, because you might have changed your business model by then. So keep track of some ideas that you might want to include in your book if you're below an 8, but don't spend a lot of time focusing on your book. Next. A book is one of the most compelling tools in this information age. It can create a deep connection between the author and the reader, much more so than any other content marketing strategy, be it social media, blogs, articles, speaking, any other mechanism. You just don't get that deep connection. Now, you might be thinking that you want to get a passive income stream from your book. Well, you can get royalties from book sales, but it's not very much. So that's not a great reason to write a book. Most authors sell fewer than 100 copies of their books. And if you're looking to grow your business from your book, chances are you do a lot better to give your book away than to sell it anyway, because the amount that you would get from the sale is really not all that great. If you give somebody a book and they come and purchase your services or your products, you'll make a lot more money for that. We've already talked a little bit about how writing a book can greatly enhance your credibility. It also expands your visibility. As I mentioned earlier, Amazon's got 5 million people coming to it daily. So when your book is on Amazon, they have access to find you. Also, Google loves Amazon. So when your book is on Amazon, when people are searching on Google for your topic, you're going to come up in the search engine. It's a wonderful business development tool when you can give copies of your book out to your leads, to your prospects. You can give it out at trade shows and at conferences. It can be a raffle prize. You can use content from your book in your content marketing strategy. Put some tips on social media, write blog posts and things like that. So it's a wonderful way to drive traffic to your website and to get more content out there, which is going to further increase your visibility. I've also already mentioned that writing a book can greatly improve the relationship you might have between you and your readers. There's also some satisfaction that you get knowing that your book is helping to improve other people's lives. And it's a legacy, which can be really important to people to know that all of the wisdom that they've accumulated can now be left for other generations, and they won't be forgotten. That book is going to be out there forever. But in addition, there's some significant personal advantages to writing a book. Next. When you have written a book, as Sarah found, it will greatly enhance your confidence, your feeling of accomplishment. It will also help you to better articulate your message and deepen your understanding, impact all of your communications. You spent a lot of time writing a book and honing your message, and that will really improve all of your communications. It will also improve the communications of your staff so that when they have to articulate your message, they'll be able to do it with a lot more clarity. So writing a book is not just a bucket list item. It's an integral part of a 21st century business strategy. You want to think of your book as a conversation between yourself and your clients, your prospects, your staff, your network, and others who don't even know you yet. So in the time that we have remaining in this webinar, we want to share how you can get your book done without losing your mind in the limited time that you have available. Next slide. You might be wondering, how do you get started with writing a book? How do you decide what topic to write on, and how do you find the time? Well, that's what I'm going to take you through next. There is a lot more information available in an online course that I've created that's available on my website, SkillBites.net, but you'll get a taste of this in this webinar. So first, we're going to touch on the importance of identifying your business objective, defining your target audience. Then you'll select a topic that aligns with the needs of your target audience and your business objective. You develop a game plan for how you're going to get your book written. And then we'll talk about how to outline your book, which will make it a lot easier for you to write your book. And next. Your book ought to be part of your business strategy. It's a powerful tool, but it's only going to move you in the right direction if you identify what that direction is that you want to move to. Otherwise, you're not likely to achieve nearly as much from your book. What are the business objectives you might have? Well, perhaps you want to increase a particular revenue stream or expand into a broader geographic market, or maybe a different vertical of clients. Maybe you want to use your book to educate your target market or get speaking engagements. Figure out what is your primary business strategy and how that book is going to fit into that strategy. Next, you want to identify what actions you're going to need to take with your book to help you achieve that business strategy. For example, if you want to increase the revenue from a particular service that you offer, then maybe the objective for your book is to increase your visibility with the target readers or the target market for the service that you're looking to increase revenue from. How are you going to do that? Well, when your book comes out, maybe you email everybody to tell them about your book. And maybe even you can include the PDF version or a link for them to get a copy of your book. You could also do guest appearances on podcasts and get speaking engagements, which you're more likely to get when you have a book, because you can reach out to those podcast hosts and event planners with a copy of your book. Think also about what action you want your book reader to take. Do you want them to come into a coaching program, or subscribe to your newsletter, or maybe join your Facebook group, or enroll in your mastermind or an online course that you have? Because the more you can think of how you're going to use your book and what you want your target reader to do, the more likely it is that your book is going to enable you to achieve the objectives that you're seeking. Next, the second step is to define who you want reading your book, your target audience. Many people are resistant to the idea of narrowing your target audience, but it will actually make your book a lot stronger if you can define exactly who you want reading your book. It won't be everybody. One of my authors, Sean, made this mistake. He's a trademark attorney, and he wrote a general primer on trademark law. The problem was that his clients didn't really want a general primer on trademark law. That's what they came to him for. He knew that if he had narrowly targeted his reader to the people who were confronted with international infringement of their trademarks, that would have been a much better audience for him. His target audience was more interested in that topic, and that's who he wanted to serve. So when you can narrowly define your target audience, your book is going to be a lot more important for those people. They'll find it more easily, and it will be more resonant with them when they know that you're talking directly to them and you understand the issues that they're dealing with. Once you define your target audience, then you want to think about all of the pressing needs of that audience that you can help solve for them. You may have multiple target audiences. Well, you could include multiple audiences in a single book, but another strategy that's even more powerful is to have separate books for each audience. One of my clients, Terry, did exactly that. She's a marketing consultant. And she had a couple different audiences, one of which was beauty parlors and another was spas. So she wrote a book on marketing tactics for beauty parlors. And then she wrote a second book with about 85–90% of the same content on marketing tactics for spas. And those spoke directly to her target audience instead of having both of them lumped in one book. Okay, next slide. A lot of people start with defining what their topic is. But the problem is, if you do that, you might not be identifying a topic that is going to align with your business objectives and the needs of your target audience. So when you do that groundwork first, you're more likely to come up with a topic that's actually going to be more productive for you and helping you achieve your business objective. I've had many people come to me saying, everybody tells me I need to write a book on X, whatever the topic is. Susan was a good example of this. She attended a conference where she told everybody at a luncheon that she attended a particular story of hers. And everybody at that lunch table said, oh my God, Susan, that's such a great story. You have to write a book on it. Well, it turns out that one of the people at her table was one of her clients and said, you should talk to Judy. She can help you get that book written. So she called me up and I said to Susan, okay, tell me what your business objective is and how does that book help you achieve that objective? And there was a dead pause. About 30 seconds later, she said, it doesn't. It has nothing to do with my business objective. At which point I said, well, then why would you want to write this book now? And the answer was, that's a good question. I don't have a good reason for writing it now. It could be something that she gets to some other time, because it could still be valuable for her in some respects. But if she's focusing on growing her business and the book is not going to help her with that growth, then was it really going to be worth it for her to spend her time doing that? Without identifying your business objective and that target audience, you could be writing a book that's really not going to accomplish for you what you would like. So what you want to do is generate a list of ideas of topics that could fit in with your target audience's needs and align with your business objectives. Go over that list to figure out which are the ones that you are most interested in working on. And then step 3 is to do some market research to figure out which of those remaining topics have the most interest in your audience. Next slide. How do you confirm interest? Well, Amazon turns out to be a really helpful resource for you. You can plug in search terms into Amazon and see what comes up. You might find that there's a whole lot of books on your topic. Does that make it a good topic or a bad topic? It actually makes it a good topic, which might sound backwards. But if there's a whole lot of information on your topic, there's a pretty good chance there's a whole lot of interest in that topic. And on the flip side, if there's nothing on your topic, well, you would own that landscape, but maybe nobody's looking for that topic. So then is it really worth your time to write a book when there's not a whole lot of people interested? Look at some of the best sellers on your topic and check out the product details section on their book pages. You can scroll down and you'll find a little section called product details, and you'll get a lot of helpful information there. You'll find out how many pages are in the book and what categories the books are in and what their ranking is and how many stars they have and how many reviews they have, which is really good information for you. The ranking is what you want to focus on, because if the books in your category are ranked really high, like 100,000 or 400,000 or whatever, that means they're not selling very well. A number 1 ranking means it's selling more than any other book in that area, and it's probably selling pretty well. So this particular book that I have up with the product detail, maybe library management isn't a terribly big area, so number 1 ranking might not indicate there's a lot of books. But in the other categories, those are really big. So if they have a ranking of 25 or whatever, that's a really good indication that they're selling a lot of copies. Now you can also look at Google keywords. You can do a Google keyword search to find what comes up and see how much people are searching on those words. You can look on YouTube to see how many videos there are. You can do searches for blogs on the topic, podcasts, just to get a sense as to how much interest there is on the topic. And that information will help you figure out which of the topics you've identified you want to keep pursuing and use as the topic for your book. Next. So you've defined your objective, your target audience, and your topic. Now it's time to figure out how are you going to get your book done. If this is a high priority for you, you need to treat your book like any other project. You need to have a timeline for when you're going to get it done, and then figure out how much time you're going to need in order to accomplish it within that time. Let's work backwards a second. Let's suppose you want to write a 100-page book and have it done in 6 months. Figure that you'll need a month or so to do some of the market research and putting together your outline and the foundational stuff. That leaves 5 months for writing your book. 5 months to write 100 pages, 20 pages a month. 20 pages a month is 4 to 5 pages a week. How much time will you need to write 4 to 5 pages? Well, let's suppose you decide it might take you 2.5 hours. That could be 1 hour, 1 day a week, and 1.5 hours on the weekend. Then you'll just have to figure out, when do you want to write that, spend that 1 hour during the week, and when do you want to spend that 1.5 hours during the weekend? Or maybe it's 45 minutes 3 times or something along those lines. Think about what you're currently doing that you could minimize it. Maybe you could reduce the amount of time that you're spending on it so that you can free up time to work on your book. Or maybe there's some things that you're doing that you can delegate. Whether if you have no staff members, maybe you can hire an intern or a virtual assistant for a period of time to do some of that stuff. If you don't want to do that, well, maybe you have some family members who can take on some of your responsibilities. If you're cooking dinner every night, maybe get your spouse or your kids to cook occasionally, or take out meals, or any other types of chores that you're spending doing that for this period of time you can hand off to somebody else. Because you already have a full plate. So if you're going to be able to free up time, you need to figure out what that is that you can free up. And if you're going to delegate to somebody, make sure that they have the ability to do what you're asking them to do, because otherwise it might wind up taking you more time to correct the problems that arise from their doing it wrong, which would really be a shame. Think about any obstacles that might come up and how you're going to deal with them. And lastly, try to come up with somebody who can hold you accountable, somebody that you respect, so that you are not going to want to report to them that you didn't get the work done that you had planned. Have them check in with you on a weekly basis, or even more often, so that you can keep track and get the book done. Okay, next. Fifth step is to outline your book. Now, most of my authors have found that it is much easier to work from an outline than to work from a blank computer screen or a piece of paper. But not everybody. Some people find that an outline is too restricting for them. So you have to do what works for you. But I would say easily 4 out of 5 of my authors find that an outline has been really helpful. I suggest starting with a brain dump. Don't think about what goes where or whether to include it or not. Just get out all the ideas in your head on the topic that you're thinking of writing. You can do it on a piece of paper. You can do it on index cards. You can do it on your computer. You can do it on sticky notes. I kind of like the sticky notes. For one, they're pretty. For another, they're easy to move around. So when you get to stage 2, which is collating the ideas, you can just move these sticky notes around into different categories, and then you can take all those categories and subtopics and put them in the order that you want for your book. You should also collect all of the information that you've already created. Maybe you have some videos or some presentations, some PowerPoints or other documents. Maybe you have published some articles or blog posts on the topic. Gather all that information, go through it, figure out what in that pile of stuff you can incorporate into your book so you don't have to recreate the wheel, and put it in the outline where it belongs. Then when you get to that section, you'll know exactly where to go for the information. While you're putting together your outline, put yourself in the shoes of your client. What information would they want you to cover? What order would you take them through if you were starting to work with a new client? That will help you fill out your outline as well as put it in a good order for what your client is going to need. Now, this document should not be viewed as something that you have to follow religiously. It's a dynamic document. It will change as you're writing. You might come up with more ideas to include. You might want to rearrange the order in which you have things. You might even decide there's some things that are in your outline that you don't need in your book, that it's really not necessary to include. I wouldn't throw those ideas out. Just put them aside, put them in a file. Maybe you'll have another book someday that those ideas will work well in. So treat the outline as this dynamic, fluent thing that you can change as needed. But when you have an outline, it will make things a lot easier because it will enable you to focus on exactly the one topic in front of you at the time. So it makes it much less overwhelming to get your book done. And you don't even have to go in order in your outline. If you are solving a problem for one of your long-standing clients that you deal with in, say, chapter 5, but you haven't yet written chapters 3 or 4, that's okay. You can cover in chapter 5 how you address the problem, because you've just gone through it with a client and it's now top of mind. And then that part's done. When you have the whole book finished, you can go back and make sure that you've got appropriate transitions into the material that you may have written out of order. The idea is to get the content down, not necessarily in the precise order, but get it down, because that'll make it a lot easier for you to finish your book sooner. And when you have that outline, it will give you a good sense of how much time you're going to need to get your book done. Now we've just finished the 5 steps for getting your book started. We're going to look at a couple different writing options. The first option is using a ghostwriter. Now, many people view a ghostwriter as sort of like cheating. It's not their book if they haven't written it. Actually, ghostwriting is widely accepted. There are a lot of very famous authors who have their books ghostwritten. It's actually a strategy that you decide on that somebody else is better able to write the book than you, because that's not your strength. Your time is better spent doing your business. You can give them all of the ideas, and then they can take your ideas and create the book for you. You go over the content, and you can make sure that it says what you want it to say. You'll get your book done quicker, and it'll be a lot more professional when you have a professional writer writing your book. But it is expensive, and you do have to make sure that you are carefully selecting your ghostwriter. You want to make sure that you're using a ghostwriter who is working in your genre. If you're writing a business book, you don't necessarily want somebody who ghostwrites memoirs or fiction books. You want to find out if the ghostwriter likes your topic. If the ghostwriter is not enthusiastic about your topic, they might not be a very good ghostwriter for you. You want to touch on things like how much are they going to charge, and how many drafts do you get, and when do they get paid. You want to have legal protections, that the work is work for hire. They don't own the copyright to it, and they're not going to infringe anybody else's copyright interest, which might get you in hot water. So there are a lot of issues that you need to deal with but it could be a good option for you to get your book done a lot sooner. The second option is speaking your book. This is particularly good for people who aren't terribly comfortable writing, but very much enjoy speaking. Basically, you're going to take your outline, and for each of the topics, you're just going to record yourself speaking about the topic, and then you can convert that audio into text. You can either work from that text, or you can give the text to a ghostwriter to work at from there. Now, there's a couple ways to do this. You can record yourself, or I recommend that you create a list of questions. You can turn your outline into a list of questions, hand that list to somebody in your target audience, and have them ask you the questions. Record your answers then, because that will give that interviewer the opportunity to ask follow-up questions that might be ones that you hadn't even thought about asking. But as they're listening to your answers, they might need you to clarify some things. And by doing it that way, you're going to make your book a lot more understandable by your target audience. So again, you can work from the text yourself, converting the audio to text, or you can hand it off to a ghostwriter or a really good editor to work it from there. Next. The third option is called staging your content. This is where you're going to basically write your book in little bits of 300 to 500 words, basically the size of blog posts. You can post them as blog posts, you can put them on social media, you can write articles, you can share them with people in your group coaching program or mastermind or whatever, and get feedback. It gives you two advantages. It reduces the overwhelm of thinking about the whole book, and it gets you some useful feedback that you can then incorporate into your book so that your book is going to be a better product for your target reader. And then a third ancillary benefit, it improves your content marketing strategy. You'll have a lot more content out there, so you'll be a lot more visible. Now, the fourth item I have here, hiring an editor, is not really an option. The reason why it's here is that if you know that you're going to have an editor correct your product and polish up your manuscript for you, then you don't need to spend your time doing that. Your time is better spent getting the content down and then hiring a professional editor to polish it for you. I've had a number of my authors spend an inordinate amount of time getting their manuscripts because they keep reworking it. Well, that's not a good use of their time, and their book isn't going to help them if it's not out there. So get the content down and rely on a professional editor to correct it for you. I'm going to touch on this point again a little bit later, but you really do need to have an editor. The best writers still use editors. It's a separate set of eyes, somebody who's not quite as close to the material as you are. And it's really important that your book be well written. Otherwise, it's going to detract from the credibility instead of enhancing it. All right, so now we're going to move into the different publishing options. Next slide. There are three main publishing options. If you can get a traditional publisher to publish your book, that's terrific. There's a lot of prestige involved in having a traditional publisher. But it's very hard to get and very time-consuming to get. Most traditional publishers do not accept unsolicited manuscripts. So you have to go through a literary agent to get a traditional publisher. Literary agents usually work on commission. They get 15% of whatever you get. whether it's an advance or royalty. So they're not going to take you on unless they have reasonable assurance that you're going to be able to get a traditional publisher to accept your book. There are three main criteria that traditional publishers, and hence literary agents, are looking for. One, the book has to be a really good book. Two, you have to have a very sizable network, not in the thousands, but in the tens and hundreds of thousands. And three, you have to have a good marketing strategy. Because a traditional publisher is going to be outlaying their cash to get your book done. They'll provide the editing and layout and cover design and distribution and things like that. So they'll only reap benefits from your book if you sell a lot of copies. And they're going to rely on you to be able to help them do that. If you don't have all three of these, it's going to take more time for you to get a literary agent and then get a traditional publisher. If you get a traditional publisher, let's say it takes you 6 months to get one, it's going to be another 12 to 18 months before your book comes out. So if you want your book out more quickly, then this isn't going to be a good option for you. 6 months is actually pretty conservative. Most people find that getting a traditional publisher takes a lot longer than that. The second option is self-publishing. Self-publishing means you're figuring out everything yourself. It can be inexpensive, but incredibly time-consuming. And worse off, you might make a lot of mistakes, like I did when I self-published my first book. And when you make those mistakes, that could seriously jeopardize your credibility, which is one of the strengths of writing the book in the first place. So if you don't want to spend your time trying to find an editor and a layout designer and a cover designer, figuring out how to upload your book to Amazon, what is metadata and why is that important, and how do you market your book and all that stuff, then that might not be the best option for you. The third item is assisted publishing, which is essentially what SkillBites is, an assisted publisher. Also sometimes referred to as hybrid publishing or indie publishing. Indie for independent. It's going to be a lot quicker for you to get done than self-publishing or traditional publishing, and you'll get much better quality unless you really know what you're doing as a self-publisher. For instance, from SkillBites, we have vetted a number of different editors and layout designers and cover designers to be able to provide the quality that our clients are looking for in those services. Now, one thing you have to be a little careful about is finding an assisted publisher that is going to provide you with the quality you're looking for. I've had many people coming to me disappointed with other hybrid publishers or assisted publishers. So you have to be careful. One of the people that came to me, Mark, he went through an assisted publisher right before his book was totally done. They went bankrupt. And he had to fight for months to get his files out of that assisted publisher. So you do need to be careful about that. All right, we've got some time left. I want to very quickly go through the post-manuscript steps here. We've already talked a little bit about the importance of getting your book edited and proofread so it doesn't have errors. If you're going to publish your book on your own website, you don't need ISBNs. But if you're going to publish on Amazon or any of the other online book retail sites or in bookstores, you're going to need ISBNs and a barcode for your back cover. You may or may not want to get a Library of Congress control number. That's optional, but it's kind of a nice thing to have on your copyright page. You should have testimonials and reviews because a lot of people read those in order to make their decision of whether to buy your book. So you need to allocate some time to get those. If your book doesn't look professional in the layout design, it's not going to help you with building your credibility. And likewise with your cover design, you need a really nice cover to attract people to your book. If it's kind of a schlocky cover, then people are going to assume that there's not enough quality in the book to make it worth their while to read. Some people make the mistake of hiring a graphic artist for their cover. Well, they could be a really skilled graphic artist, but if they're not skilled in cover designs, you might not get the cover that you're looking for. Also, graphic artists don't always understand the cover specifications that printers are looking for. So I've had many authors who've had their covers done by somebody that they knew was a good graphic artist. They come to me because they can't get their cover accepted by Amazon. Well, they didn't meet Amazon's cover specifications, and so Amazon keeps rejecting their cover files. So you have to be careful there. If you're going to have your book as an ebook, then you're going to need it formatted for ebook publication. Amazon has an automated conversion process, but the problem is that it's not very reliable. So when my authors come to me, we get their books formatted in advance and we don't rely on Amazon's automatic conversion process. It's free to get up on Amazon, but it's also really easy to do wrong. So one of my authors, Rich, uploaded his book to Amazon and he included the TM symbol because he had trademarked the phrase that he used for his title. He was wondering why nobody could find his book. He couldn't find his book when he put the title in the search bar on Amazon because Amazon was looking for the TM symbol, which wasn't there. When we took the TM symbol out of Amazon, then his book became findable. People who neglect to put keywords in or categories, things like that. Yeah, some of those are optional, but they're highly recommended so that people can find your book. And then last but not least is marketing. If you don't do some promotion of your book, how are people going to know that your book is even there? You can do the marketing yourself, but if you don't have the skills or the time to do the marketing, then you need to have a budget to do some marketing. If you're not prepared to do it yourself or to spend money on marketing, then you should think seriously about whether this is a good product for you, a good project, because maybe it's not going to help you the way you want. Next, just to sum up what we've covered, we looked at the various benefits of being a published author. We looked at the 5 steps for getting started with your book. Next slide, we looked at the writing options, the 4 different writing options. We looked at 3 different publishing options, and we looked at the 8 post-manuscript steps to get from manuscript through to publication. Next slide. So we've covered an immense amount of material in a short period of time. There is a lot of information here for you. And you may be wondering, how do I even comprehend all this information? It can be overwhelming. And your next step is to schedule a complimentary consultation with me. And I'll help you to develop that game plan to get your amazing book out there. Here's a link to my online calendar, or just put in the chat that you would like to chat with me, and I'll be in touch so that we can have that conversation and get your book started. We've got a little bit of time left for some questions and answers. So let's look in the chat to see whether we have some questions coming up. Mitch has put the link in the chat, so you could just click on that to get to the online calendar. So Mitch, do you want to unmute, or shall I go through and find questions? I see one from Claire. Are those final steps things that SkillBites helps people with? Absolutely. We can provide all of those post-manuscript steps, as well as before your manuscript's done, if you need coaching services or ghostwriting services or help with your outline, things like that.
There was a discussion that actually, so I've been having where we're looking for a transcription service. I happen to use Otter, but not for book writing. Is there if you do the voice, is there a service that you recommend to transcribe that into text?
Well, there are actually quite a few. You can just do it on your phone. There's a voice-to-text app that you can have on your phone. There's a number of free ones out there. You may have some extra things that come through with a transcription, but it's hard to beat free. I got a question here from Karen. What are some good marketing approaches to best promote your book? Well, we don't really have a lot of time to delve into that, but I do have an online course that does delve into that. We'll publish it, also available on my website at skillbites.net.
Oh, and your calendar evidently doesn't have anything after April 15th?
Right. So I will be in touch with anybody who needs to schedule something after the, I think I have my calendar set up to cover the next few weeks. So if you don't have time in the next few weeks to book a call and you want to have a chat with me, then let me know and I will be in touch.
And somebody can just blow off taxes anyhow. So they're not really important, right?
Somebody can blow off what?
Taxes, like April 15th, that's right. Tax day, right? So people can just blow that off.
Right. And Michelle is asking it as a tax accountant, so I can well understand why she wants to wait until after April 15th. Okay. Anything that I've missed?
No, I was looking. There didn't seem to be questions because you really covered everything.
Okay, great. Well, thank you all for coming. If there's anything that you found particularly valuable in this session, if you want to put that in the chat, that would be great.
Well, I did see one thing. It wasn't really a question, but it was a comment from Claire. She's writing her training materials first and then turning them into a book. And what are your thoughts?
Yes, you can go both ways. I've seen authors who've taken their books and made them into online courses. And I've seen people who have online courses who then take material to create a workbook that goes along with their online course, or a separate book that is sellable. In fact, I have one client out in California who did that. She has a piano teaching system, and she created some books that go along with her piano teaching for her students. But she's also able to put them on Amazon so that people who aren't her students will find out about her and then can hire her when they get her wonderful books.